Okay, this is a test. Can people on Zoom hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, back to I'll just start my explanation again. It's wordy, but oh well. About a year and a half ago, I actually discussed the property with the applicant because it was a time when he was considering being on the planning commission, and I wanted him to understand how it might affect any action that he was undergoing. And so I learned a lot about the issues on the property. And for a minute, I thought maybe I needed to recuse, but staff pushed back and said, "No, you don't have a conflict. You don't have any financial input and involvement in this." So, I did have information that I got a year and a half ago, but it's everything that I know is very articulately stated in the staff report. So I don't see a need to recuse on this item. So with that, well, I'll call up the first item of business is boundary adjustment 2501, variance 2502, a setback variance, and variance 2503, a lot frontage variance at 360 Via Linda Vista and 370 Via Linda Vista.
And now I am going to recuse myself and step out of the room to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you. That was Roy Rosenthal stepping out. So I will call this item up. This is boundary adjustment variance. It is boundary adjustment and two variances at 360 and 370 Via Linda Vista.
Okay, thank you very much. For the record, Fred Roland-Hagen, Planning Director. I'll be presenting for Chelsea Royston. Chelsea was the case manager for this and prepared the staff report. She's out of town this week, so I'm here to present. Let me get the presentation up. Okay, thank you. Okay, we these are the cases that you're hearing tonight. There's three of them, and they're intertwined. And we'll provide that explanation as we go through this case. But this is case number ADJ 2501, variance case number 2502, and variance case number 2503. These three cases pertain to 360 and 370 Via Linda Vista. So the first one is a boundary line adjustment, and the other two are variances. Okay, so the requests are to, first of all, regarding the boundary adjustment is to revise the property lines or redraw the property boundary of 360 Via Linda Vista to incorporate an existing carport that currently exists within the property boundaries of 370. And with that come two variance requests. One is to reduce the rear setback on 360, reduce the rear setback on 360 Via Linda Vista on the proposed rear lot line to approximately 18 feet. Typical setback is 25 feet. And then the second request, which is for 370 Via Linda Vista, is to reduce the lot frontage from 85 feet to 15 feet. Okay. And here's a map of the two properties, 370 and 360. Apologies, there's a little bit of a typo. The property in red is actually 360, not 370, of course. And that area, the box that is in blue is the area that is currently under part of 370 and would be the boundary line, the boundary would be revised for that box area to be incorporated into 360. So the red identifies the proposed lot line. Where that box is where the carport currently stands. So here is an existing and a proposed configuration. Again, the carport is on the property of 370, and if you look at the proposed lot line or proposed configuration to the right, the lot line would go around the carport to include the carport on 360. So what that does is that that creates that creates a nonconformity for the rear property line right behind the carport, and it creates a nonconformity on the road frontage for 370 and reduces the road frontage. So right here, you can see the existing lot line to the left, and then the proposed configuration on the right. So because the boundary adjustment is completely intertwined with the two variance requests, the Planning Commission is hearing the boundary adjustment along with the two variance requests. Typically, a boundary adjustment would be an administrative case that would be reviewed and approved by staff. But what is up right now are the approval criteria for the boundary adjustment. There are 6 of them. The property line that is being proposed cannot increase or decrease an existing lot by more than 15%. The boundary adjustment cannot increase or decrease the number of lots or parcels to create new lots, tracts, or parcels. Number 3, the boundary adjustment cannot affect a recorded easement without the prior approval of the easement holder. Number 4, there cannot be any right-of-way that is affected or changed as a result of the boundary adjustment. Number 5, the boundary adjustment will not create any nonconformities or increase the degree of nonconformity of any existing structure or use. And this is the criteria where the variances come in. The variances are required in order to resolve the nonconformities that would pop up as a result of the boundary adjustment. And then number 6, the boundary adjustment must comply with all other applicable requirements of the code and other applicable regulations and requirements. So here you can see the proposed configuration of the boundary adjustment. You can see the lot line going around the carport and the 2 requested variances. So the first variance is for that rear setback, which goes from the carport, the rear side of the carport, to the proposed property line, where the proposed variance would be 18 feet, where 25 feet is required. And then the second variance is what you see in green, the green line, which would be a reduction of that lot frontage to approximately 15 feet. Currently, 85 feet of lot frontage is required. I do want to note that even today, the current configuration of the current configuration of the lot for 370 does not have 85 feet of frontage. So the lot even now doesn't conform to the current standard. Okay, so we'll go through the approval criteria. We'll start with the rear setback. the first variance for the rear setback for 360 the variance cannot result in development of areas at risk of natural hazards unless adequate mitigation is provided, and no adverse impact will result on adjacent properties. In addition to that, I believe the Planning Commission must find that the variance meets 4 of the following criteria: that the applicant would suffer unnecessary hardship, and or that there are no design alternatives or alternative locations for structures that would eliminate the need for the requested variance. Number 3, it cannot deprive the applicant of rights enjoyed, or would the current situation deprive the applicant of rights enjoyed by a majority of the other properties in the same zone district? And then the need for the variance cannot be the result from actions of previous property owners or is otherwise a self-imposed hardship. Or is there a disability affecting the owners or tenants, and or the variance request is required in order to preserve a contributing structure in the historic subdistrict? One thing that we wanted to note regarding criteria number 2, identifying that there are no design alternatives or alternative locations for structures that would eliminate the need for the requested variance. We did identify an area to the south of the sidewalk on 360 that could be a potential alternative parking space, although it does contain potentially steep grades. Okay, then going through for the lot frontage, this is for 370 for 370, and going through the same two criteria will not result in development of areas of risk of natural hazards, and no adverse impact will result on adjacent properties. Then identifying the variance approval criteria. If you look in the staff report, the memo in the packet, it elaborates on each of these criteria, and staff is happy to answer any questions about that criteria or the observations that staff has made. Now, should the Planning Commission find it appropriate to grant the boundary adjustment and 2 variances, staff would recommend the following conditions: that number 1, approval of any of the applications is contingent upon the approval of all applications because they are all intertwined together. One needs the other one to exist, or one needs the other ones to exist. And that plat documents shall be updated to reflect the new ownership of 360 Via Linda Vista and 370 prior to recording. So we'll need a new plat showing the reconfigured property, and that plat will need to be recorded in the clerk's office, the county clerk's office. So here's our motion options. You can approve the boundary adjustment and the variances if you find that the request meets the review criteria for granting a boundary adjustment. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. So what we see here is the language options for the boundary adjustment. You can approve the boundary adjustment. You can approve the boundary adjustment based on the findings that the request meets the review criteria. And if you want, with an alteration, if you want to add conditions, please add those conditions. You can deny the boundary adjustment. or you can postpone it to, we would recommend to June 11th for further consideration. Same thing with the variance. This is the first variance for 360 Via Linda Vista. If you find that the request meets the review criteria for granting a variance, you can approve it with staff's conditions, or you can approve it with alternate conditions or additional conditions as proposed, or you can deny the variance because it does not meet the review criteria, or you can move to continue or postpone to a later date for further consideration. And then the same thing with the second variance for 370. Okay, I should probably have left that up, but I can pull that up if I need to. Are there any questions?
Gloria?
Fred, I don't have my pages numbered, but under F, the variance request must meet a minimum of 4 of the following criteria. And they met 1, 2, 3. They did not meet 4. And they're not unable to meet 5 or 6. And I question 4 because it seems as though they should not be at a disadvantage because of what a former property owner did. But I think you indicated that they did not meet that criteria.
They were the property owner. They've been the property owner since 1975.
Oh, okay.
You're
Thank
talking,
you.
you're talking about criteria for the need for the variance is not the result from actions of previous property owners or is otherwise to self-imposed hardship?
Yes. And Alan just explained to me that they have been the property owner. Thank you.
Thanks.
Steve?
It's my understanding this carport already exists.
Yes, that's correct.
And so what is motivating this change?
I guess what's motivating the change was a potential sale of one of the properties. And the desire to have the carport on the property that it's intended to go towards the house that it's intended to go to.
And right now there's an easement allowing use of that by 360, but it's preferred that that would be full like ownership of, so that that's not subject in the future.
Yeah, you stated that prior to this action, the lot frontage for 370 did not meet the standard either. So that house was just built. So was that just waived because of the crazy way that the lot had been laid out 50 years ago or something? Or?
Yeah, I believe so. So that'd be my understanding that we consider that a legal non-conforming lot. The lot existed prior to that particular standard coming into effect. So as a legal buildable lot, we authorized the building permit for that property.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, then if the applicant's representative is here to speak, it's their time. I don't know if there's the applicant stepped out of the, so.
Is there an applicant online that would like to speak? If so, there's a raise your hand button at the bottom of your screen. Okay. I'm gonna walk over to the head computer over there to allow Jane to talk.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my name is Jane Rosenthal. I am one of the co-applicants. And I have owned the property, yes, for 48 years or so. Actually, I don't have much to say. We really tried to make this process as clean, simple, and easy as possible. We attempted to meet all the criteria, you know, the 4 criteria in particular. I'm available to try to answer any questions you might have about the history. I don't pretend to understand all the ins and outs of your procedures. But so I just really wanted to just introduce myself, let you know that I am here, that I can answer a question if there's a question about the history, and appreciate your taking the time to look at this.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, thanks. If you don't have anything else to add, Jane, then we'll let you go. And if we need you, we'll call you back.
Thank you.
Okay, so now at this point, we're open to the public. If anybody in the audience would like to speak on this item, now would be the time to do so. Okay. Yeah, so pardon? Yes. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak? Step to the table and start by turning on, hit the little speaker thing in the middle and make it green. And start by stating your name and address for the record. You need to be about 2 or 3 inches from the mic for the audience to pick it up.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sean Warner. I live at 240 Violeta Vista, down the road from the current owners of 360 Violeta Vista. I know them very well. That's why I came to the meeting. Had to fight for a seat here, but I got one. So I saw the pictures, and I just also want to describe the part where it showed the proposed driveway is a sheer drop off on that street, and it would require a lot of construction to build an alternate location for that carport or a parking space. And I think it would probably upset the views and the beauty of our neighborhood, building a giant alternate place to park. And like you guys already discussed, that carport already exists, and it was sold with the intentions of being sold with 360 Violeta Vista. So I just, as a neighbor on the street, you know, I obviously recommend my approval. I'm good friends with people, but so I just hope you guys approve this motion.
Any questions for the? No. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
I have one question,
sure.
maybe some clarity. So where does 370 park? If they're not using the carport, or where's their access to park?
There's a driveway that, yeah, there's a shared driveway that goes up. You know, there's 3 different properties that share a driveway that's just right off the, you know, it's a cul-de-sac up there. So their garage is around on that access. It was a strange configuration from the 70s when I don't think our zoning code was quite as precise on setbacks and lot frontage and so on. Okay, this is the last call. If anybody online would like to speak to this, now would be the time to raise your hand and we'll try to get you up to speak. Okay, Seeing no takers, I think I'll close the public comment portion of the hearing. And we're ready to deliberate. What-
Thank you. I think this makes just good common sense. I can see why the owners would like the property to be within the existing, within the proposed boundary rather than a legal easement. I'm a little troubled by the fact that we don't meet the 4 criteria. I'm a little troubled by the fact that, you know, our job is to meet the following criteria. And this application doesn't meet the minimum of 4 of them, as you've just discussed, Fred. And number 4 is the one that I have the question about. So that's my only concern. If I were one of these property owners, I would want this taken care of. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So appreciate any guidance.
Any other thoughts? Justin?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Commissioner Latimer. I think they're trying to do what they can with the way the parcels are set up right now, but to me, the variance process is a way to introduce flexibility into our code. But approving this, or even considering approving this without it meeting the 4 additional criteria, all of them, or any 4 rather, would be introducing additional flexibility I don't think we're authorized to do. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I really am struggling with this one. I like to absolutely meet the 4 criteria. I thought staff did a great job of articulating exactly what was going on. I think the problem for me is, you know, I see the biggest stumbling block is criteria 1, that it's not reasonable use. And I go back and forth on that. And yes, they were able to sell the property with this easement, but long-term, I think it kind of hobbles the owner of the property. And the way I can rationalize it to myself is that this is a historic anomaly that should have been addressed, that is unique to this cul-de-sac and the configuration. So I am probably in agreement with Justin and Gloria that it's just probably something that's reasonable to do. I guess I just go back and forth, but that's my feeling. And so
It just seems to me that doing nothing would leave more of a mess than doing something in this case.
yeah, I think where it would come back to haunt someone would be if and when someone wanted to sell 360 again, I mean, there's an easement, but it's very difficult to deal with that.
Just a question about the easement, if you will. Does that designate on your deed that you have access to that property, but at the same time you own it? Do you own the property if you have a legal easement? Or does 370 still own that?
Yeah, so easement, a lot of it will depend on how the easement is written. Easements are written in many different ways, but what it is, it's a type of property right. So in this case, there's an easement on 370 that gives the owners of 360 the ability to use that property, even if they don't own it outright.
So the easement gives them access, but it doesn't indicate ownership.
Correct.
Thank you.
Just to be clear on the easement question, that will go as long as, that will stick with the property as long as forever, unless both parties decide to terminate that easement. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And again, I'd need to see the actual easement agreement, but yes, it's an agreement between two parties that usually goes in perpetuity unless one or the other agrees to get rid of the easement, or they both agree to get rid of the easement.
It's difficult because, you know, it sounds like the easement cures the problem without the variance. So, yeah. So anyway, would anybody would like to make a motion or more discussion?
It's my understanding that do you want a motion for the adjustment? Or do you want all three at the same time?
How do
Do
you
you want
recommend it,
them
Fred?
bound together?
Yeah, so
You can't have one without the other.
yeah,
So
you can't have, we would recommend that the planning commission make a motion for all three. You can certainly split them up, but it doesn't make, if one passes without the others, or if one gets denied without the others, none of them really work.
Thank you. I'll give it a go. I move to deny the boundary adjustment at 360 via Linda Vista and 370 via Linda Vista based upon the findings that the request does not meet the review criteria for granting a boundary adjustment as set forth in City Code Section 18.06.4.20 and deny the approval of variance 2502 and variance 2503 for the same reasons.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? No. Okay, if there's no more discussion, then all those in favor of the motion?
One moment, our attorney has his hand raised,
Okay,
unless I'm looking at the wrong box. Oh, I apologize. I was
no.
looking at the wrong box. Sorry.
No, you're good.
okay, it looks like the applicant would like to make a comment, and we generally will allow that. A brief comment.
Thank you. I waited until the discussion was over before raising my hand. I would like, especially if you do deny, and we would like to move forward on this. I mean, you specifically mentioned number 4, that we did not meet the criteria of, and if I read that correctly, that's the hardship. I cannot see how 360 not owning their carport is not a hardship. It makes them unique in the block. They're the only ones that would not own the property that their cars sit on. And if that's not a hardship, I don't know really what it is. So again, I only want clarification if we have to move forward on this as to how we can try to meet those criteria.
The way the criteria are pretty specific, and you know, moving forward, I guess you could work with staff. I'm not sure that they could come up with any new recommendations from what they've already done. but that's kind of where we are. You know, and that's their finding, and now there's a motion and a second. So anyway, I don't want to go back and forth at this point, but I think that the best, it sounds like there's a solution in place, and to change it, you can work with staff to see if there's anything they can do. But I'm not seeing it. So we have a motion and a second, and if there's no more discussion, then all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Okay, all those opposed? You cannot abstain. Okay, so the motion passes 4-1. So we'll move on. The next item of business is a code revisions work session.
May I, Chair, because we had that technical issue at the beginning, I did receive a message from our city clerk asking if we could kind of give a quick summary of what was said prior to the audio issue being discovered. So I can run through that really quick, and if anyone feels I missed anything,
Okay.
please chime in. So we went through roll call for the meeting, wherein Commissioner Graybill, Commissioner DeLay, Commissioner Wilson, or Vice Chair Wilson, Chair Delwich, and Commissioner Latimer were all present, as well as online. Our attorney is present, and our planning director and myself are present. We also discussed the meeting minutes, why there aren't any for approval this evening, and we discussed the reason for that, which is that the city has a new policy wherein all of our boards and commissions, we have the preparation of the minutes that happen by the managing staff department, and then those are sent to the clerk for review, because we do have a new template that we're using to make sure all of our minutes are compliant with digital accessibility standards. One item to kind of revisit is that sort of comments on non-agenda item. If anybody wants to comment on non-agenda item, we can maybe open that back up, since maybe they didn't hear that prompt while that happened on mute, if that's okay with Chair Delwich.
Are you saying that someone wants to comment on non-agenda items?
I am seeing a couple hands raised up on the screen, so if there is a want to comment on a non-agenda item, perhaps we open that section of the hearing again, or the meeting again, since those online weren't able to hear that prompt.
Okay, if it's non-agenda item, fine. If it's what we've already discussed, it's not fine. We already voted on it. We can't unvote. Yeah, you can step up here to the microphone. We don't do chatter from the audience. Yeah.
Just that because of Sean Warner again, 240 V Linda Vista. But the current owners of 360 V Linda Vista do want to speak, but because of a technical issue, they haven't been able to. And when you guys mentioned the hardship, they're going to be maintaining a structure that's not on their property, because the intent was that carport came with a house. Now they have to spend money on it to stain it, maintain it, to make it look good for our neighborhood. And now they're going to be doing that for a structure that belongs technically to somebody else, even though they have the right to park under it. And there's no alternate location for them to park at all. That's it. Even though there's an easement. And then at some point in time, that point will come up again when it's coming to sell either property. So I think there's some things that aren't being considered fairly. And especially I think that Carly Keller, the current owner of that property, should have a chance to talk before a vote was taken. That's fair.
Thank you. Fred, have any thoughts here? Or attorney, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm trying to I would defer to our attorney, because I don't know how to bring back a case that's already been decided on.
Yeah, so since the commission's already voted and decided on this, we can't have a revote on this. Trying to think, because this situation doesn't, usually doesn't or hasn't come up in my experience yet. But yeah, unfortunately, the commission's decision's been made, so we can't go back on that. And it was supported, there was discussion and it was supported on the record. So yeah, I don't think we can have a revote.
There is an appeal process.
Yeah.
And there is an appeal that's afforded to the applicants if they wish to appeal the planning commission's decision.
Am I allowed to comment?
No. So I think, yeah, I agree, Fred, that the appeal process is the only avenue. I mean, we tried really hard to get the applicant. We had, I'm sorry that this happened, and I think that it's the next move would be to go to city council. Okay, we're done with the item. I'm sorry it didn't work the way you wanted, and I'm sorry about the glitch. And if I could bring it back and allow the applicant to speak, I would. But this attorney has said that we don't have that right. Well,
Before we continue, can we kind of state for the record where we are with this? Because I heard conflicting evidence tonight that who is the owner of that property? Who has the right to speak on that? Because I saw in here that it was under contract. Did ownership actually pass to the new owners? Okay, well, okay, so that's confirmed. Second thing, we confirmed that the technical issue was not on our end. Okay, so we gave the applicant, from what I heard, time to come online. They were not able to. This was a public meeting. It had notice out to the public. They had all opportunity to come here and speak. They did not. I'm not saying they don't have a right to appeal. I encourage them to do so if they feel that they want to, but I want to make their record clear that it was not an issue here. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was not an issue with the planning staff or our equipment here on this end, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It was not due to our equipment.
thanks, Justin. Is there somebody else? Okay. Not intended, that's. Okay, we are now going back to the discussion of non-agenda items since we did have an equipment malfunction at that point. So if anybody in the audience would like to speak on a non-agenda item, now is the time.
Shall I go ahead? It's John Block, owner of
Yeah.
123 Manitou Ave. Okay, yeah, and just so you guys are aware, on our side, the audio kicked in when the attorney spoke, so everything after that was audible on the Zoom. Just so you're aware. So yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is John Block, the owner of 123 Manitou Ave, the old La Femme Motel. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I learned of the agenda a little bit late. I sent Alan, Fred, and Chelsea an email earlier, but wanted to give you an update as quickly as we could. So I'm here to speak about two things, quasi-related to the topic today, but really more so related to our LIHTC process. So we wanted to give you the update there. So the low-income housing tax credit application, the LIHTC application, which was supported by 20 local companies and residents in Manitou, but also City Council, the Housing Advisory Board, and the URA. Unfortunately, we heard back from Chaffa late last week, and they did not grant us the tax credits, even though I thought our application was killer. So that stinks. We have a call with them on Friday to talk about next steps, but honestly, we're pretty discouraged because we spent, over $50,000 putting the application together and a lot of time generating a lot of that local support. But one of the feedback items from Chaffa, which is relevant to you all on Planning Commission, which they actually brought up twice, was this issue of density in the zoning code. And I know we've spoken to you all about that in the past, but the main feedback was that we're on the low end for density, and one of the most important factors for them in deciding who gets tax credits is the number of units, which makes sense. And they're specifically looking at the number of units developed relative to the tax dollars awarded. So we're at a disadvantage in that category relative to the other applications, simply because we can't build more units. So just to give you context, we're 20 units an acre. We're maxing out our density at 43 units on our 2.2 acres. Our consultant told us that, who's been doing this for 20 years, helping people get LIHTC deals approved by the state, said that the average LIHTC deal used to be about 50 units. It's now closer to 53 units. So it's going up, and they prefer more units. So I know you're starting to look at zoning modifications, but we strongly suggest that you consider looking at the density code again at the same time, which again, the density is pretty low. It's the reason, in our opinion, there hasn't been a new apartment building in Manitou in over 50 years. Because at the end of the day, without any modifications, it's tough for us to justify spending another $50,000 to do another LIHTC application next February, which again, these applications only happen once a year. So if you do consider higher density, we're happy to provide staff or you with any information that we have. We've done a lot of research just from a developer perspective, but in closing, we hope the Planning Commission takes this to heart, and we hope to hear from you soon. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now, is there someone else that wants to speak? Okay.
Hello. Can you hear me? This is Megan Day, alternate planning commissioner. Just for the record, I've been here the whole time.
Okay. Did you have something you wanted to say on non-agenda?
No, I just haven't been able to speak before, so wanted to let y'all know that I've been here.
I'm
That's all.
sorry.
Thank
Seem
you.
to have had some technical difficulties. We tried to get you in, and I guess the audio wasn't working. Okay, I think we're done with that, and we can move back to the next item of business, a code revisions work session.
Okay, let me pull this up. Okay, this is our work session on code revisions. Put a packet together. We've got, Planning Commission had a number of code revisions that it wanted to review. One of those was regarding the state legislation that was passed last year. The main legislation was regarding ADUs, or accessory dwelling units. There were two other things that the Planning Commission wanted to review. One were the density requirements in each of the zoning districts, and the other one was criteria for variances. Those are forthcoming, and what I hope to do is have some information on those other two items in June. I was focusing on the state legislation for this particular meeting because there's a lot of information, and there are a lot of different things that are happening, and a lot of things for the Planning Commission to consider with this state legislation. So I was focusing on that. And the state legislation is regarding housing occupancy limits accessory dwelling units, minimum parking requirements, and what the state calls transit-oriented communities. And I will go each of those. But as I said before, code revisions, we're looking at a few things for review in addition to the 2024 state land use and housing legislation. Also going to look at variances and the densities in each of the zoning districts. Okay, so for the state land use and housing legislation, there were 4 bills that were passed in 2024. One was regarding housing occupancy limits, as I said before. One was regarding accessory dwelling units. One was regarding minimum parking requirements, and the other one was regarding what they call transit-oriented communities. Fortunately, this fourth one does not apply to any area within the city, and so no action is required in order to comply with the law. But that doesn't mean that we don't need that we don't have to, or it doesn't mean that we don't have to do anything if we want to pursue that, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Let me start with the first one, House Bill 1007, housing occupancy limits. This particular bill prohibits local governments from setting a maximum occupancy limit on a single-family dwelling unit unless the limit is based on, number one, either a demonstrated health or safety standard, or number two, if it's based on some sort of governmental affordable housing program guideline. We do not have any affordable housing program guidelines, but we do have a building code and we do have other codes that govern health and safety standards in the city. I'll get into that a little bit later. But according to the bill, all occupancy limits in the state, including those based on familiar relationships, were considered void as of July 1st of 2024. So as I said before, health safety standards could include standards that are found in the building code, like the International Residential Code. For example, looking at people people based on unit square footage or number of bedrooms or something like that. House Bill 1152 is regarding those accessory dwelling units. This bill actually provides a land use regulation that allows ADUs for all municipalities of 1,000 or more in population and are within an MPO or a metropolitan organization. So City of Manitou Springs does follow this criteria. So according to the bill, the city must follow House Bill 1152. It requires ADUs as a use by right that would be accessory to any single unit detached dwelling unit. Accessory to any single unit detached dwelling unit that for any zoning district that allows single unit detached dwelling units. Also, HOA rules are that are more restrictive than these rules are considered void. The city, according to the bill, the city may not require new off-street parking spaces for the ADU when no existing off-street parking exists, is in a zoning district that requires one, or more spaces for the primary dwelling, or is located on a street where on-street parking is prohibited. I'll clarify that a little bit later. The city also says that the city may not require an ADU or a primary dwelling on the same lot to be owner occupied. We cannot impose a restriction that it be owner occupied. And also the city may not apply what they call restrictive design or dimension standards that would not otherwise be required for the primary dwelling. So in other words, we can't treat the ADU differently than we would treat the single family residence in reviewing it in conformance with standards. And so how would we comply with this bill? It would be to adopt an ordinance that amends the Land Use and Development Code to permit ADUs in all zoning districts that allow single-family dwelling units. What I included in the packet was some information that I got from the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, kind of a how-to. It provided a list of things that we cannot do, and it provided a list of things that we are able to do. And so I indicated those on the PowerPoint presentation. I won't go through those in detail, but because some of those are all I've already indicated. But there are certain things that that we cannot do, including not allowing ADUs between 500 and 750 square feet in size, which is kind of interesting. But what that means is that the legislation allows us to require an ADU to be a minimum of 500 square feet, but but we have to allow it up to 750 square feet in size. And we can put a cap on the size of ADUs of 750 square feet. Another thing that we can do is require that the ADU be the same size or less than the main residence. And so that will come into play if, for example, the main residence is, for example, 600 square feet in size. We can put that cap at 600 square feet for that particular ADU. So the DOLA website did indicate a number of things that jurisdictions are allowed to do and are allowed to regulate. So we can require designation of an existing parking space on the lot for ADU use. So if there's already a current parking space on the property, we can designate that for the ADU use. We can regulate short-term rentals of ADUs. So that means cities can prohibit or otherwise regulate the use of the ADU as a short-term rental. So if we don't want ADUs to be used as short-term rentals, we can indicate that. The law allows that. We can require compliance with design and dimensional standards that we would otherwise require of the main residence, setbacks and things like that. Like I said before, we can limit the maximum size of an ADU to be no larger than the size of the single-family dwelling unit. We can also allow the legislation requires that that we allow at least some kind of ADU between 500 square feet and 750 square feet. If we want to, we can allow ADUs smaller than that, or we can allow ADUs larger than that if we wish. We can define ADUs to include or exclude specific types like motorhomes, RVs, and trailers. So we can specify that you can't use a trailer or a mobile home or an RV as an ADU. We can apply historic district standards to ADU applications. So that means we can require our Title 17 the Historic Preservation Ordinance to apply to ADUs when somebody's building within the historic district. And we can require compliance with adopted building codes, adopted fire codes, utility codes, stormwater codes, the floodplain ordinance, and things like that. The law also allows us to require, if we wish, require evidence that the water supply and wastewater treatment capacity exists. So if we are short on water supply or short on wastewater treatment capacity, we don't have to allow additional ADUs, but we can include that as part of review criteria. If we have any applicable development impact fees, that would apply to a single-family residence, we could apply that to the ADU. We also, if there are any local programs or incentives to encourage ADU construction, we can leverage those and allow those. Currently, we do not have any programs that encourage ADU construction. So what I did on my PowerPoint, I tried to put together kind of a quick and dirty description of what an ordinance could include or could look like for the city of Manitou. So we could adopt an ordinance that prohibits the use of the ADU as a short-term rental. We could require off-street parking for the ADU. And this is because we currently have in our ordinance requirements for off-street parking for single-family residences. And so we can do the same for the ADU. We can require ADUs to be no larger than 750 square feet, or smaller than 500. Or we can also indicate that the ADU can be no larger than the primary single unit dwelling unit. So if the primary single dwelling unit is 1,000 square feet, for example, we can say it needs to be at or below that main dwelling unit. We can require conformance with existing setbacks for side and rear. Let's see. We can restrict the number of ADUs to just one. The law only requires us to allow one ADU. There are some communities that allow multiple ADUs on a property, and we can do that, but we don't have to. Require conformance with Title 17. We can disallow RVs, camper trailers, and other types of dwellings. We can require compliance with adopted fire and building safety codes, as well as require evidence that we have the capability to provide water and wastewater to the ADU. Okay, that was a lot. So that was accessory dwelling units. My next slide goes into the third bill, which is minimum parking requirements, but maybe we want to talk about ADUs first.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice just to, well, it's fresh in my brain because I'll forget everything you said. As far as restricting, can we restrict things like shipping containers or tiny houses or pre-manufactured units?
Yeah, yes, that's my understanding.
And the other thing, can we, like if the property had like a house that was only like 15 feet height, I've seen some ordinances where they say the ADU cannot be taller than the main house. Is that going to be restricted?
Yeah, my understanding is we can regulate the height of the ADU the same way that we regulate a regular the single family residence.
But I mean, if it's a general residential and you could go up to 25 and it just happens a house, there's a little bungalow that only goes to 18, can I put a 500 square foot or 800 square foot ADU that's 22 feet?
I'll have to check. I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure.
Because I've seen, when I was on the HAB, we looked at a lot of that, and a lot of them had that thing about they couldn't dwarf the main house.
Okay. Yeah, let me look into that.
Any other questions on AD? Gloria?
Thank you. Director, did I hear you say at the beginning that we could change our land use development code to state that ADUs are not allowed in any zoning district?
If I said that, I did not mean that. No,
Okay.
That's not correct.
Because I thought, how can we supersede the state law?
Yeah, according to the law, we have to allow them where we allow single family dwellings.
Okay, thank you.
So what that means is we don't have to allow ADUs where we don't allow single family dwellings, like in certain commercial
Mhm.
districts.
Thank you.
And how about, the June 30th deadline? Do we have time to sort of go beyond that since we don't have an ordinance ready now?
Yeah, I'm looking into that. So Department of Local Affairs has a extension request. One of the things that the law requires is that communities submit a report on or before June 30th to show how we're in conformance. We can request an extension up to 6 months to submit that report and explain how we are intending to come into conformance with the law. So I'm exploring that with DOLA right now. They had indicated that that they were going to put a request form online. I haven't seen it yet, and so I'm checking on that as we speak. One of the things that DOLA wants to see in that request for extension is why is there a need to do that, and what are you doing right now in order to come into compliance? Number one, we're having working sessions right now. My response would be we're having working sessions now and hopefully public hearings to make code revisions to be in compliance with the law. But also the other argument is we spent a year working on our comprehensive plan. And I think it's important to make sure that our goals and objectives in our comprehensive plan are the way we want them before we start tackling something like ADUs. So yes, I'm working on that, and I'll get information to you as soon as I get it from DOLA.
Thanks.
Okay. Why don't we go on to the third bill, House Bill 1304, minimum parking requirements. So this is this prohibits local governments again, within a metropolitan organization and partially within what they call a transit service area from enforcing minimum parking area requirements for multifamily residential developments, or what they call residential adaptive reuse projects and mixed use projects that have at least 50% residential uses. So now with this, what the bill does allow is for local governments to impose minimum parking requirements of no more than 1 space per residential unit for residential developments with 20 or more units or that contain regulated affordable housing. So it has a little bit of a relief valve. It does allow some exceptions to that no minimum parking requirements. There's parts of the city that are within this transit service area, and it's based on location of transit lines. And of course, we have a couple bus lines that run along Manitou Avenue. So that area is the bubble area in dark that's on the screen right now. So this is the area that would apply to this particular bill. Let's see if I can. So yeah, as I said, there is a portion of the city that's located within that particular area. In order to comply with that bill, what we would need to do is adopt an ordinance that inserts applicability language into the code that would clarify that minimum parking requirements for multifamily residential development and these types of projects, other projects covered by the bill, do not apply to the areas identified. And so it's kind of one of those, it would be applicability language that we could work with with our legal counsel to craft to make sure that it complies with this particular bill. Oh, let me back up.
Any questions on this? For the transit area, is there any minimum frequency of the bus service that has to? Because it seems like last year that they had things like that. I don't know if they threw that out because it blocked too many places out or what.
I can't remember what the bill says. Mainly because when I got on the DOLA website, they had a very easy to access map that showed exactly what areas apply apply and what areas don't. I think that's in the bill, but I can't remember what the frequency needs to be.
I think I can answer that. So a transit area, it has to have a public bus route running every 30 minutes or less for 4 hours or more on weekdays. Or of a transit station, sure, yeah. So 30 minutes or less for 4 hours or more on weekdays.
Okay, thank you. The other thing I wanted to note that I didn't have in my presentation, but I did provide the Planning Commission with a legal memo that I received from our legal counsel, talking about our home rule authority, and how it could conflict with these bills. I'm not going to speak to legal matters or anything like that, and that's why we have legal counsel. But if the Planning Commission has any questions about that legal memo, and about that difference between home rule authority and what these bills require us to do, Kunal is available to help guide us through that.
Just one question, just to clarify, so I understand correctly. So you said on the parking requirements within that area, within the transit area, if it's 20 units or over, parking requirements could be applied, but if it were 19 units and lower, there would be, the city could not require any parking, any off-street parking for that?
Yeah, what the bill says is we cannot enforce minimum parking area requirements for multifamily residential developments in these areas. But yeah, if you have 20 or more units, we can require 1 space per unit. That means we can't require 2 or more, but we can require up to 1 space per residential unit.
For buildings over 20. But for buildings under 20, there would be potentially no requirement at all for any off-street parking.
That's my understanding, yes.
And speaking of the home rule issue, is it true that some cities are pushing back and trying to litigate on that?
I don't know the current status of that. And Kunal, I don't know if you have any information on that. I don't know what kind of pushback there is or what kind of conformance is happening at this time.
Yeah, so we're not sure exactly. There hasn't been a case or, a lawsuit yet, but there are municipalities that are looking at whether they actually have to comply, whether this conflicts, because it's regulating in a area of law that is usually reserved for local governments. And so I think we're still trying to figure out whether a municipality can get away with not complying. I think the risk obviously is that the state could sue us for not complying. A resident could sue us for not complying. And so I don't know if any municipality is wanting to be the guinea pig on this yet. So it's still ongoing.
Oh. Commissioner Day?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to encourage us to not think just about minimum compliance, but actually to think about the purpose behind the state legislation and why they had to pass state preemption, and that is to enable more attainable and affordable housing. And how can we as a community also think about moving in that direction? beyond minimum compliance, but maybe thinking about a broader area where we could remove minimum parking requirements, perhaps downtown, and even the general residential areas that are in historic districts or something. So I'd like to encourage not just a barely meeting the minimum of the law. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry. So that is the end of my presentation. And like I said, what we can do, we have invite the Planning Commission to have any kind of discussion that you'd like. We can, what I'm here to do is listen to see what your thoughts are and see what direction you'd like to go in. And we can start putting a draft ordinance together for the next meeting.
You're speaking specifically on these items here.
Correct.
Okay. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it would seem to me that we'd want to meet with or at least share documents with the Housing Authority Board and other people who are weighing in on this. And I don't know how broad a group that might be, but I'm sure there's many interested parties.
One thing I thought of, and I don't even know if this is feasible, but Fred, on your slide where you had the proposed criteria for an ADU ordinance, is there any idea on how many parcels could even partake in that if that was to apply? Just ballpark.
No, I don't have that number. I'm not sure, but that's a good question. We can get that information.
And you mean in terms of like they have the area or?
Yeah, I mean, all the factors. I didn't know if like, hey, that looks great. And then we pass it and we realize only 2 parcels could actually do it without a variance or something like that.
Yeah, I think one of the things would be, that one of the things that other communities have are what are called attached ADUs where, people carve up their house. Pretty much every house in Ward 2 is huge. And lots of them have 2 people living in them. So they could be, in theory, what are called attached ADUs. But I think we should, my thought is that we should look at some kind of a draft to address ADUs. We've just had this constantly come up from the HAB and from other people in the community. And now it's pretty much, there's a lot of emphasis on this throughout the state, and all we can do is start, and then it's ultimately up to council where they want to go, but we're here to plan, and this is where our planning function comes in, where we're not just legislating, we're not just judging on the code, where we have some possibility, as Megan said, that maybe we need to think of some of these things. So I like the idea of at least coming up with some kind of draft to look at in both of these areas. Any other thoughts?
I support that. I would like to do it jointly with at least the Housing Authority Board. I don't know who else might be, but I think we could. I'd like to hear their ideas, and I think you attached a document, Fred, that detailed some of their thoughts. And I don't know whether those were plans or drafts or just brainstorming.
I think they came up with a draft ordinance.
Did they? Okay.
And that was what we saw. And I think that draft ordinance has been around for about 4 years.
Okay.
And it's now it's like we've moved to the next level of discussion where, when we did our code update, that was sort of kicked down the road and we weren't going to do it till maybe some other time, and that other time never came. But I think now it's appropriate to address it. And I think this is where our expertise, you know, where we can add to what the HAB is doing just by, you know, brainstorming what we see from our experience in terms of need for parking or not need for parking. You know, should there be a min and max size and so on, you know, all those things. I think, you know, we've heard people come here and we know what people's issues are. And, you know, I think this is our opportunity to be creative and visionary as people want us to be.
So you believe we're ready for the next step?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's see, one of the Housing Advisory Board meets the third Wednesday of each month. And so we'll be meeting with them. So they're going to be convening next Wednesday. I could ask if they want to join the Planning Commission, you know, at your June meeting, if that's acceptable to everybody.
What does everybody think? Yeah, seems to be a consensus.
Okay.
That would be a good thing. They could join our meeting. We don't want to join their meeting.
We can always do that.
Or, I mean, we could do it the other way, but this way, they come to ours.
The one thing that I know, I reviewed their draft, the HAB's draft from I think it was 2018 or something like that. And the main thing, the main difference that I noticed was they had recommended up to 2 ADUs per property or per single family unit, as opposed to the law or the legislation that just requires 1 ADU. So, you know, that's probably one of those points of discussion that we can have. The other things that I noticed in the draft, in HAB's draft was appeared to be similar to what the legislation currently allows communities to do. You know, require conformance with established standards, conformance with the historic preservation ordinance, conformance with applicable building codes and things like that.
Okay. All right. Anything else, or is that it?
Is it possible to circulate that draft ordinance?
We received it in our packet, I think last month. Was it last month?
Yeah, it's in the packet for today.
Oh, for today.
Oh, for today.
So
Okay. I didn't
yep,
see it.
and it's
Sorry.
online, and I'm happy to send it out via email by PDF.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready to move on then? Notice of council action and updates.
Right. Trying to remember what happened since the last meeting. Plan Manitou was accepted by the city council after planning commission's acceptance. So that's good. Also, the stormwater ordinance, the planning commission recommended approval of the revisions that were in section 18 regarding stormwater last month. The city council wanted to have a work session first, so we held a work session yesterday, and now we're ready to move forward with first and second reading. Also, let me put in one plug. This is for the Historic Preservation Commission. This is Historic Preservation Month, and I was trying to find it in the newspaper and I couldn't. But the Historic Preservation Commission has a scavenger hunt or a treasure hunt. And what I can do is I can send an email out to Planning Commission members. They've got a treasure hunt that you can go and look and identify certain features that they have asked for you to find, and you can submit them to the Historic Preservation Commission and qualify for some prizes and things like that.
Yeah, we can print them out tonight before you leave if you'd like one.
Okay. Anything else?
That is all that I have for now.
Okay, does anybody else have anything? If not, then let's adjourn.